Okay, in this video we're going to be looking at how subsidies can help to achieve each of the economic goals. So first of all, in terms of subsidies to boost aggregate supply and economic growth, okay, it's important to recognise that subsidies will help boost aggregate supply and productive capacity in the long term and help to achieve more sustainable long-term growth. So the subsidies that are targeted towards helping businesses to restructure and increase technical efficiency. So we're talking about subsidies that encourage investment in better equipment, subsidies that help to reduce market failures from an under-allocation of resources to productive investment, but also towards encouraging investment into more renewable energy sources. These will all lead to, in the long term, better productive capacity, whether it's through better capital and technology or through maintaining our natural resources. They will lead to a more efficient allocation of resources. Subsidies help to achieve better technology and better innovation, but they also help to lower firms' costs of production and in the short term make them more willing and able to supply because they're more profitable. Other benefits of subsidies are they boost our international competitiveness, so that should increase the market share of many Australian producers, particularly if we're looking at like export development grants and things like that. They can also allow firms to take advantage of economies of scale because they will be able to export to a larger market, which will also boost aggregate demand and sustainable growth. So effective policies are really good in achieving sustainable growth because they encourage restructuring, they reduce environmental pressures, they lower firms' costs of production, and they boost our international competitiveness. In terms of inflationary pressures, subsidies can reduce firms' costs of production and therefore reduce inflation in two main ways. They help to cover the cost of production for firms so they can sell their prices at a lower price. So again, the initial subsidy is helping to lower their cost of production, which directly helps to reduce inflation. And secondly, subsidies encourage businesses to become more efficient. They encourage restructuring, and that helps to boost efficiency. So therefore, that helps to increase their help to achieve lower prices as well. So if subsidies result in better quality resources, so through investment, that should help to lead to lower average costs for businesses. So technological advances, improving capital productivity, help to reduce pressure on prices so we can achieve that 2 to 3% goal over time. In terms of full employment, some subsidies help to correct market failure and boost efficiency, so it helps to lead to less structural unemployment. So for example, subsidies given for wages in particular areas, or subsidies given to employers to help reduce their costs, help to reduce structural unemployment. Subsidies makes firms more profitable, so by giving subsidies it reduces their production costs. This can encourage them to expand. It can also lead to less business closures. So subsidies can provide the support businesses need to stay in operation, which then creates more jobs because less people become structurally unemployed. So there's fewer closures. And on the flip side, the subsidies might give the businesses the chance to expand, which will also create more jobs. So the reduction in structural unemployment is a positive. There may be potentially more unemployment in the short term if the subsidies are for things like investment in technology or capital, because then they don't need as many employees. So that might be a short-term cost. But in the long term, if that subsidy is used to try and reduce prices, we should become more internationally competitive, and hopefully that may lead to jobs in the future. So while some subsidies can lead to using more capital in the production process, because of encouragement to invest, hopefully that will lead to less redundancies in the long term because of lower prices and increased international competitiveness. So generally they help, particularly if they're wage subsidies, they lower firms' cost of production and boost profit margins. That leads to less structural unemployment, but on the flip side, some subsidies can lead to potentially using more capital in the production process. Living standards. Basically, subsidies should help to accelerate GDP growth and slow inflation. That should help to boost our purchasing power. So if subsidies are given to producers, that should help to create more jobs, but also help to lower prices, which will boost our purchasing power. Increased employment from the increased competitiveness will help to boost real incomes and our purchasing power. Just like most of these policies, they're all leading to lower prices, which is good for our living standards, and they're generally leading to more jobs, which is good for our living standards. The other benefit of subsidies is they can help to reduce market failures. So they help to ensure there's not underproduction of things that have social benefits for society. So that might include subsidies for health and education. It may include subsidies for installing water tanks or solar panels, so we're reducing emissions and climate change. So subsidies should be something you can link to non-material living standards as well through their impact on providing goods and services that are beneficial for our living standards, whether that be health and education or environmental policies. Weaknesses of budgetary policy spending on subsidies. Subsidies to one group or industry can actually work as a tax on other industries. So what can happen is that when we increase subsidies, it basically gives businesses more purchasing power, which can often lead to, if they're buying things from other companies like intermediate inputs, that can lead to higher prices. But there's also an opportunity cost in the sense the more we subsidise businesses, the less money we have available for education, infrastructure, health, etc. So the government needs to really carefully weigh up whether the subsidy is worth it, whether the benefit they're receiving is going to outweigh the cost in terms of other industries, and the negative impact it can have on the budget. So subsidies can have a big negative impact on the budget. If we look at the direct action policy, we went from a carbon tax to a subsidy for supporting renewable energy. That had a big negative impact on the budget because instead of collecting money, we were giving money out. Subsidies can also reduce efficiency if they're given in areas where we have comparative disadvantage. So if they're given too much in terms of protectionist policies, that can also have a negative impact as well if it's in those areas. Finally, subsidies allow local firms often to remain inefficient and avoid restructuring their production. So some subsidies can reduce our productive capacity and living standards because firms don't have that incentive to become more productive. They can also lead to government failure and unintended consequences. So it can lead to a less efficient allocation of resources because firms are reliant on that subsidy and then become less productive. Subsidising inefficient industries rarely creates jobs in the long term. So you've got to specify between subsidising inefficient industries as opposed to subsidising for areas that have a positive impact on our long-term growth. Thank you.